So Simon, you were asking the question, what are some of the really big ideas in a nutshell for less? And first of all, I want to say my overall motivation is that I basically am trying to work to reduce suffering in product development. And that includes both within organizations and in terms of their economic benefit. And we've put less together as really a way to reduce suffering in product development. Another related question is, like, why less? Where does it fit? And I think of the question of the prescriptiveness of different frameworks, methods, and processes along a kind of a scale from very low to very high. And as an example of things that are very low, we've got things like the learning organizational movement. They describe a set of principles and values, and they're quite insightful at a deep level. And then up at the other end, a lot of prescriptiveness, we've got frameworks and systems, for example, like the rational unified process. And something I've come to see over the years working in organizations is that when you introduce a system that's very, very low on prescriptiveness, one of the difficulties is that in young organizations which are trying to make a significant change and improvement, it's hard for them to get their heads around what to really do concretely. And then nothing really sort of meaningfully ever happens because it's all so vague and amorphous. And on the other hand, there are systems which are quite prescriptive and they give an awful lot of details. And the problem with these systems is that they don't tend to be flexible enough or contextual enough for the wide variety of organizational contexts that we need to put this stuff into. Sometimes how these systems try to solve this problem is they say, well, okay, we understand that, but we'll give you a really long laundry list of potential things, and then you'll do a kind of a subtractive process and remove the things that don't actually work. And in theory, that sounds like a perfectly reasonable way to go, but having been involved, for example, in organizations that were trying to adopt the RUP, there's just something about this that doesn't really work very well. And on the other hand, there's a kind of Goldilocks zone of frameworks and systems of thought that are in between, where they're prescriptive enough to give folks some clear idea of where to start, but they're not so prescriptive that you need to delete stuff from them to make them appropriate, or they're not contextual enough. And it's our feeling that frameworks like One Team Scrum are sort of in this middle ground, and so too is less or large-scale Scrum. It's just enough structure and prescriptiveness for a group to know where to get started, but it leaves a lot open for the highly different situational cases that they need to consider. And some groups might consider that unsatisfactory. They really want a cookie cutter or cookbook approach about everything that needs to be done. But that approach really destroys one of the core principles of Scrum and of large-scale Scrum, which is empirical process control, which is that groups in many ways need to discover what their organizational design, their framework and techniques are going to be. So to me, that's very much at the heart of what LESS is about.
Excellent, thanks Craig.